People are so scared to meet in person and talk to people and want to get to know people. And what happens is when you become an unforgettable person to somebody, eventually your talents or whatever you do or whatever services that you need will come to mind. Like, it's not going to be for everybody, but it's going to be for the right person.
That's so important. You just set a bar. And I think that's so important because something that I've even had to learn is, that's so important to build relationships, but I've even had to learn is that sometimes you're not always going to be all the way ready. And I know for me, like, I've been a procrastinator in the past, where sometimes you don't want to do things because you feel unprepared. You feel like, there could be so much more things that you can get done, but at the same time, like, you won't even know if you're ready for something unless you try. Hello everyone and welcome back. My name is Jasmine.
My name is Matthew Cohn.
And today we are going to be talking about doing it scared. So welcome back to episode 34, where we talk about entrepreneurship, business, life, and everything in between. You guys know that we always like to start out every podcast with kind of talking about our week and also shouting someone out. So let's just get into our week. How was your week?
Did we get a shout out?
Yeah, but you want to do that first?
Okay. Well, more so, how was our weekend? We need to start saying how was our weekend.
How was our weekend?
Because our week just literally started.
So when we record the podcast, we're usually recording on Mondays. Yeah.
So no, the weekend was great. Washed my car the next day. It started raining. So me and Tyler was talking about that in the meeting today because he was like, he got a Range Rover. He washed it, and then an hour later it started raining. I said, I just hate when that happens, man. It's so annoying, but. Survived, made some money, went to go film. Because it gets dirty. It gets dirt. Oh. Like, if you ever notice, like, after it rains and your car is already clean, you'll notice there's dirt on the car.
Oh, I used to always wonder, like, why?
Why is my car
you get
dirty?
It double cleaned.
No, it just made it worse.
Well, my weekend was good. I got to rest. We got to go roller skating, which I've gotten so much better at roller skating, you guys. Like, I started roller skating, like, a month ago or 2 months ago?
I don't know.
I think it's been like 2 months.
Yeah.
Because we kind of go on and off weekends.
You ain't got no bruises?
I didn't get any bruises.
Damn, that's a first.
I only fell 2 times.
That's the first that we've been and you fell and then you didn't get a bruise. Mm-hmm. That's definitely a first.
Yeah. But I've been getting a lot better. Skating is so much fun. Rollerblading is so much fun. Yeah, I love music, and I think, just doing that with music, like, it's just so therapeutic.
I know how to spin without falling. That's what I learned.
And also because we watched that movie.
Roll Bounce?
Yeah, and that movie really got me interested in skating.
Yeah.
But that was a really good movie.
Yeah, for sure.
And then golfing. We went to the pool. We went golfing.
Worked out.
Got
some shit done.
We talked about, just our weekly stuff. So one thing that I don't think we've really touched on the podcast is, like, every Sunday we usually sit down and we brainstorm. Well, first we talk about our week. We talk about, like, what plans do we have for, like, the upcoming week. How can we help each other better as in a relationship, as business partners, as friends. Like, I think we talked about it on a previous episode that's honestly, like, been one of, like, the most life-changing things that we started implementing is just communicating on a weekly basis. Because I think sometimes you get super, super busy with emotions that you forget to kind of just stop and take a pause and, just talk about, like, how was the week, just analyze things. So we did that yesterday, and then, just got ready for the week. And then today, let's go ahead and get into the shout out. So we wanted to go ahead and shout out. Are you a service-based entrepreneur that provides some kind of service, but you don't know how to create content in order to convert someone from following you into a paying client? I'm going to tell you exactly what to post in order to start generating more leads, attract high-paying clients, and get more DMs than you can possibly answer. I will help you how to find your niche, how to find your target audience, and craft offers that will attract top buyers every time you go to make a post. Text me content to 513-516-7332 to learn more on how you can get mentored by me for only $99 a month. I wanted to go ahead and shout out Insta at no sleep for the wicked _ and they said the power of doing it now is such a huge life hack. And yeah, I think doing it now is just so important because something that we want to talk about in today's episode is how sometimes you have to do things scared. And I think for a lot of people, they kind of put things off for a later time, or they don't want to do things because they're scared. But you really have to throw yourself in the fire and just figure it out as you go. So for example, one of the things that you've always told me is that even when you have clients as a business, you always have to keep reaching out to new businesses or just reaching out to new clients or new leads or new prospects.
Do you know why though?
Because you always want to have a sales pipeline.
It has nothing to do with sales. It's building relationships. You always want to have relationships tucked. That's why John reached out to me, because we had a relationship. I helped him out. I didn't want anything from him. I wasn't expecting anything from him. But because I had built a relationship while I was already making money, when I needed the money or when
you were doing your skill.
Boom. And that's how it's just building relationships. Because then once you build a relationship, you have meetings. That's why I like having physical meetings with people. And people be scared to do that. And I'm glad that's a topic that we talk about. Why people are so scared to meet in person and talk to people and want to get to know people. And what happens is when you become an unforgettable person to somebody, eventually your talents or whatever you do or whatever services that you need will come to mind. Like, it's not going to be for everybody, but it's going to be for the right person.
That's so important. You just said a bar. And I think that's so important because something that I've even had to learn is, that's so important to build relationships, but I've even had to learn is that sometimes you're not always going to be all the way ready. And I know for me, like, I've been a procrastinator in the past, where sometimes you don't want to do things because you feel unprepared. You feel like, there could be so much more things that you can get done, but at the same time, like, you won't even know if you're ready for something unless you try. And going back to just outreaching to businesses, you still have to do those hard things, because I think in the beginning of our business, or most people always say like, oh, the beginning stage of your business is so hard because you have to get clients. They don't realize that's something that you always have to constantly keep doing. It's not just going to be hard in the beginning. It's going to keep being hard at every level or every stage that you go through, because in every level and every stage, you're going to come across new obstacles. You're going to come across new challenges. And if you get scared by the first challenge that you have on your journey, then how are you ever going to get across the other hurdles? But I brought that up because it goes back to sometimes you're going to be put in a position where you have to do those hard things. So why do we wait until we're in those situations? This is something that we talked about on another episode, where why do we wait until we get to those bad situations where we let bad things happen until we start to do the hard things?
No sense of urgency. And the reason why is because when you don't have a sense of urgency, your mindset is going to prevent you from moving forward with the things that you're afraid of.
And this brings me back to one of the things that I wanted to bring up in the podcast was the illusion of time. And you kind of touched on it, where I know me personally have had a couple of people in my family pass away. And for me, it always, I don't know, it just gives me this drive of like, tomorrow is not guaranteed. Facts. Like, tomorrow is not promised. So it's like, go harder today. Like,
now.
Go, give it everything you got today. And I think for some people, everybody reacts differently to grief or, to death. But some people kind of just slow down, or they see life as, oh, well, now is the time to slow down and spend more time with my family. And I think I wanted to bring this up because it goes back to perspective. You can, going back to doing hard things, like you can see a situation from a totally different perspective, but at the end of the day, it's your actions. Like, what are your actions showing? And I think that in any situation, you're either going to be inclined to find a way and do those hard things, or you're just going to run away and keep hiding.
Yeah, and more importantly, it's crazy because I discovered that in my 20s. I was scared that I wasn't going to be home enough to do stuff with the kids. And I was so scared to the point where I didn't know what my next steps was until that light bulb hit when I started doing the stuff that I love to do. And that's why in my 20s, I was like, all right, a light bulb clicked. I want to be a stay-at-home dad. And now that I've achieved it, because I wasn't scared to chase after those goals.
Yeah.
I can literally say I'm gonna stay at home dad.
But yeah, and sometimes
that's always what I wanted to do.
And sometimes you just have to go through those situations to learn what is it that you would really do and what is it that you would really want. But I bring it back to the illusion of time because sometimes risk also isn't what we think it is, you know? I think people fear starting things, but it should scare you also to stay in the same place forever. At least for me, I know that kind of scares me.
I don't know if it scares me, but I wouldn't say scare me. Staying in the same, I've never stayed in the same spot, so I don't think that's something I fear. If you don't normally stay
I
the
guess
same or
the better
stagnant.
word is staying stuck.
Yeah.
Staying stuck is a better not a better. Staying stuck is a bigger risk than actually just trying and failing.
Yeah.
So why is it that we're always just scared to take that one step?
Like I said, it's no sense of urgency.
Yeah. And for everybody it's different, but I know for me, like the risk of failure was always coming from, well, I don't want to regret not trying harder, or I don't want to regret like not having done anything. So going back to like the risk of failure, it's like you have to think to yourself that at the end of the day, no matter what you do, there's always going to be something that you do right and something that you do wrong, or there's something that it's going to teach you. And I say that to say, you just have to find out what is it that drives you, like you said. Because I know for me, it's always been like the risk of, again, regret. Like, could I have done more? Or was there anything else that I could have given?
Yeah, for sure. Like, especially when we don't get opportunities, or when employers or companies say no to our proposals and stuff like that. It's like, damn, like, is there anything I could have done more? Is there anything I could have, like, changed? Or is there something I could have, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's always that feeling. It's annoying as fuck because 9 times out of 10 we don't really necessarily get that feedback that we're looking for in order to get past that gut feeling.
Yeah, but either way, I think the reason why I think this episode is so important and just doing things scared is that there's always going to be risk. I think, sometimes we think to ourselves that there's never going to be any risk if we just stay comfortable, if we stay on this side of life. But at the end of the day, going back to what you just said, there's risk either way. Whether you're a W-2 worker, whether you work for yourself, whether you decide to, whatever creative endeavor that you do, or whatever it is that you do in life, there's always going to be a risk. And it just goes back to like, what risk are you willing to head on? I know another one for a lot of people is like the risk of getting judged. That's why a lot of people don't start their business, because they're like, oh, what are people going to say, or this or that. But there's always going to be a risk of getting judged, whether, whatever you do in life.
I've never been publicly judged.
You don't think you've ever been publicly judged?
I mean, maybe like once or twice, but out of my whole entire life, I haven't been. Well, people leave little comments and stuff like that, but like, well, never mind. Damn, I take that back. I lied.
Matt, I need your help growing my social media audience.
All right, guys, if you need help growing your social media audience, make sure you text 602-390-7002. Once again, it's 602-390-7002. And it's been like, my life I'm almost 34 years old, so in the amount that I've been publicly judged versus the amount of time that I've been on earth is not a lot. It's more positive than anything negative. And then not only that, it's like I've never been the type of person to care about anybody's like opinions and stuff like that. And I've always been like that as a kid. That's not something, I don't even think that's something I picked up. I've just always been like that. Like when I was a kid and I wanted to do something out of the norm, I wasn't worried about what the other kids was going to think. I wanted to go do the shit that I wanted to do. Like, and that's how we all should go about life and about the shit that we want to do and the goals that we want to achieve. We should not be worried about other people's public perception or private perception of what they think about us.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to like how kids are, because this past weekend I got to be a part of this, it was like an evening choir for like this boys choir. And, kids are just so free, and they don't have any limitations on their mind at all.
Depends on what type of environment they in.
And who they're raised with, that's true. But, if you really don't let which that's hard, because it's like you can't really not impact a child. But I think when you let a child just be themselves, like they're going to be themselves, and they're not going to have any limitations on their mind, because nobody has ever placed those limitations on them if that's how they were, raised or nurtured. But yeah, going back to like doing it now, I think even us moving, like that was something where so many people still ask me till this day, like, how did you get the guts to move? Or, I can't believe that you did that. That was a big drastic change. And it goes back to
not being afraid.
Yeah, not being afraid, because there's always going to be a risk with things. And also, if you don't, I feel like sometimes when you don't take that risk or you don't do it yourself, there's going to be something that life throws at you either way, whether you decide to take like an action or you don't. Going back to our conversation going back to our conversation that we just had this weekend, I was telling you something like, oh, I want this to happen, and then it happened today. And it, I know we're huge believers in manifestation, but it goes back to like your thoughts, your beliefs. What are you putting out in the universe? What do you want to attract? And tiny steps build compound, those like tiny steps. I think going back to, doing it scared, you don't have to do everything from one day to the next day. Maybe one day you do like a small task, and then the next day you do another thing. But like, what are those like tiny things that you're doing every single day to do that hard macro task? Because I think that also another good point is that we don't always have to like do something hard all together. I think that that's another huge reason that stops a lot of people, is that they think like, oh, this huge thing or this thing that I want to do is so hard and it's going to take this many hours, or it's going to be so hard. But again, how do you know it's hard when you haven't even done anything to try? That's just the perception you have in your mind.
Mm-hmm. People are afraid to take that risk. And when you are afraid to take risk, you don't necessarily strategically do the shit that you're supposed to be doing. That's why people fail.
You know what I just remembered is how you would always tell me, just say yes and we'll figure it out. That's something that you've always done. Like, you've always said yes and we'll just figure it out as we go. And I've always been more of a, well, what's the plan? What's like the 1, 2, 3? And I don't know if this is just like a men thing, or I don't even think it is, because some men don't think like that. I really think it's you, and you're just so confident in like, we're just going to figure it out and that's it.
Yeah, and that's simply because of experience with figuring shit the fuck out. Like, it's like you gain your confidence from the stuff that you already achieved. So just over time, it just compounds the fact I keep winning. I haven't lost yet. And if I did lose, it was like a small battle or a small game. But I just keep winning. I keep winning because I keep trying to do new shit. And constantly over time, you just keep winning because that's just your path, and that's all you know. Like, it's like when a kid goes from playing Little League, right? And then they get to the minors, and they winners in the Little League, they winners in the minors, and then guess what? They eventually gonna be winners in the majors because they've been winning all their life. So it's like,
and it just reminds me that, the more that you do these things that you said you were gonna do, the more it builds confidence in yourself. And not only that, but the more it gets easier. Just because something is hard at the beginning doesn't mean it's always gonna be hard. And also going back to,
I don't know if it get easier, but.
And also going back to doing new things, I think a lot of people think that new things are hard. That's just our perception and what we think is going to be hard. But 9 out of 10 times is not hard. It's only hard because we're doing it for the first time. So.
Shit, business is still hard. To this day, I don't think business is ever going to get easier.
But I wanted to end it off with like lessons that we have learned from moving fast. Because I think that something that we always say in every episode is when we want something, we move fast. And I think for a huge lesson for me in moving fast, it has taught me that sometimes you gotta stop overthinking the plan. You gotta stop overthinking of every single possible thing that could go wrong. You gotta stop overthinking and stop trying to prepare for plan A, plan B, plan C. Because I do that. I'm like, okay, well, let's plan every single detail out. And sometimes you might start something and it doesn't even go according to plan. So I think for me, the biggest lesson in moving fast is just do it and figure it out as you go. And going back to those micro steps, like, what's one little tiny thing that you can just do now fast?
Yeah, for me, it'll be getting more shit done when I move fast. So not only am I winning, but I'm making mistakes But I think the most important thing is that when people make mistakes, they gotta learn from them too. Like, don't just make the mistake and then make it over and over again. Like, actually learn from the mistake that you made and then correct yourself so you can be better next time.
That's true.
So,
But let's get into today's hot topic. So you guys know at the end of every episode, we always like to go into somebody's question and give them feedback or our opinion on what we would do. So for this hot topic, somebody asked, how do you really do it scared? Help trying to grow as a person. I know seeking discomfort is important. I know sometimes you got to do it scared rather than not doing something at all. And of course, there's been times in my life where I was terrified but did something anyway. But those were mostly all non-negotiable. I had to do or die. When the stakes aren't urgently high, how do you make yourself do it afraid? I need tips because I'm struggling with avoidance.
your trigger. I think it's all about your trigger. People do stuff when they scared because they're triggered by something. So if you can somehow unlock or figure out what your triggers are, then you can use that to help you get over whatever you're afraid of.
And I think for me, most importantly, is the root cause. Because it's like, if you're being avoidant, there's a reason why you're being avoidant. So it's like, what's the root cause of that? Because they said that most of the things before that they did were because they had to do or die. I don't really know what that means. I would love if the person could get more into depth in that.
Ask yourself why.
But yeah, ask yourself, what are you avoiding? And in those past situations, like why did that? Yeah, like you said, why did they feel like they had to do those things, or they thought that they were gonna have to do it or die? Get to the root problem of that. Going back to me, I realized that I am a little bit ADHD, where it's like I get distracted really easily. And something that has really, really helped me, instead of avoiding the problem, which is what I used to do, and I used to be thinking to myself that I wasn't ADHD, or I just, did a lot of things fast, or I could multitask. And you always told me, you cannot multitask. Finally admitting to myself that I couldn't multitask, I realized my problem, and now I have a rule with myself where it's like, if I start one thing, I have to finish that task before I move on.
You gotten better.
If I'm doing my social media, I'm finishing my social media before I even have a conversation with you.
Or even
because I can't
anything.
multitask. And for me, that's a rule. So figure out what the root problem is from there, and then create a little rule for yourself. That
Give
helps.
yourself a boundary. Set boundaries.
Yeah.
That's
Boundaries is the word for 2025.
Yeah, set boundaries.
Stand on boundaries.
Yeah, for sure.
But that is it today. That is it for today's episode, you guys. We will see you guys in the next episode. Don't forget to like, share, hit that subscribe button. Let us know down below, what do you guys want to hear next on the podcast? Give us your feedback, your thoughts, your questions. How has your week been? Are you guys entrepreneurs? Are you guys in college? Let us know down below. And we will see you guys in the next episode. Bye, you guys.
Peace.